Have you ever wondered how Canada came to be what it is today? Well, a huge part of it has to do with multiculturalism. Canada's diversity is due to the different cultural backgrounds of its citizens, and therefore multiculturalism was born. Pierre Trudeau played a big part in the development of multiculturalism. He created the idea of bilingualism. He brought in official bilingualism in 1969. In the same year, the Official Languages Act was initiated. The point of this act was to notify all Canadians of English and French speaking that they had access to federal services in their own language. Another thing Pierre Trudeau did to benefit the developing of multiculturalism was the Charter of Rights. Trudeau created this. A few things that it stated were the right to equal protection under the law without discrimination on the basis of race, national or ethnic origin, religion, gender, age, or mental and/or physical disability. Canadians united under the Charter in a moral and legal sense. With everything that Trudeau included in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, it just made everything better. Trudeau helped Canada redefine itself as a new and improved country, as a bilingual, multicultural country. The second most important thing that helped Canada become so multicultural was immigration and the laws and regulations that came along with it. It started with the Italians. They immigrated from Europe to Toronto, Montreal, and other mainstream cities starting from the 1950s and onwards. Furthermore, in 1967, South Asian, Southeast Asian, and Caribbean peoples entered the country in big amounts and numbers of people after the liberalization of immigration regulations. At one point, the immigrants were wanted and the refugees weren't. This is only because people thought the immigrants were coming for a better reason and they weren't some kind of criminal or something. Immigrants were thought to be coming to Canada to start over and begin a new life. Refugees, on the other hand, were thought to be criminals, as if they were fleeing their country because they were in some kind of trouble. By 1971, the majority of immigrants weren't of European ancestry. This is the first time anything like this occurred in Canada's entire history. This event took place in making and creating Canada into what it is today. Canadian society has been more open and accepting because of multiculturalism. Multiculturalism has helped Canadian society realize that we aren't that different from each other. In the past 30 years, multiculturalism hasn't led to any problems. Everyone has been unified and there has been no race riots or widespread chaos. Some of these also to do with Pearson's idea of peacekeeping, which keeps these nations unified and problem-free. Some people think of Canada as the United Nations of the world. On that note, the Canadian immigration policy became less racist and the rude statements made on ethnic background became more about how important education and work skills are. This started in the 60s and just continued onwards throughout the years. In the 1960s, the Bill of Rights was introduced as well. John Diefenbaker came up with this idea of a bill. His goal was to create a more accepting and inclusive nation with the idea of wanting to help expand on human rights in mind. Stated that it would grant equality of race, religion, and beliefs and make it as if it were law. The only problem with this was that it was unworkable. People said that Diefenbaker made somewhat of an empty promise. Despite his empty promises, he still had many accomplishments throughout his rule as Prime Minister. Two of them that helped multiculturalism just get that much better was the fact that he granted the ability for Native Canadians to vote in 1960. The second thing was that he ended the rude immigration statements that had been installed by Mackenzie King in 1962. Came the Multiculturalism Act. This act has been an official policy since 1971. The purpose of this act is to give you the freedom to be able to maintain, strengthen, and share your ethnic background. It symbolized the equality of culture and ethnic groups in Canada within a bilingual country. The Multiculturalism Act helped fund cultural organizations and more second language instructions as well. This act has considered a big shift in Canada's and its citizens' attitudes. Most people were proud of the idea of people coming together. Majority of people think that multiculturalism is working. If this act wasn't created, then Canadian culture wouldn't be what it is today. Ethnicity helped define Canada and its culture. Now, a person or nation, in this case, can't become great without a few mistakes or regrets here and there. One thing Canada definitely regrets is when they opened up residential schools. Residential schools were where they sent Native children who've been separated from their families to make them more civilized. What they were really doing was stripping them of their cultural identity, their religion, language, and customs of their culture. point for Canadian government to evolve was to integrate them into white society, as they said.
Just wait a while. Another big fish in the pond.
They didn't survive these schools. This is due to the emotional, physical, and sexual abuse the Native students encountered while attending these schools. After they realized what they were doing was wrong, they started to close down these schools. The last one was closed down in 1986. The federal government formally apologized to the Native survivors 2 years later. The schools that were made and the things done at these schools are seen as a stain on Canadian identity, but as part of multiculturalism. Due to the difference. Back then, different races, cultures, religions were treated differently, but thanks to the multiculturalism, everyone is living free and accepted and everyone is treated equally. Gary Filmon, the former Premier of Manitoba, once said that Canada has an Aboriginal past, a bilingual present, and a multicultural future. The way things are going, I think Filmon might be right about one thing. Multiculturalism seems like it may become our future.